Welcome back, fellow warriors, to the stage of history. My name is Cosmo Jazz, and this is episode 2 of my guide to help possibly prepare you for the upcoming Soul Calibur 6, as well as other games in the series. Now, if you saw the first episode, linked down in the description below, hopefully you got a better understanding of the game to the point where the AI can be beaten quite easily, and you have had some fun with your friends, and now you're thinking it's time to kick someone in the chest online. First couple of matches in, and what is this witchcraft? I've never seen these things, and now I'm getting my butt kicked from here to Japan, and then they follow me to Japan. It's like, I'm not done with you yet, and then rinse repeat. Well, this is where this guide will help you in that aspect of the game, to show you can dish out the pain just as much as your opponent can. So without further ado, let's get started with Soul Calibur Tutorial Episode 2, Advanced Tactics.
Damn, son, where'd you find this?
So something you might have seen by now is that characters can sometimes go into different animations and have different attacks from those animations that are different from their normal idle style animations. The way they are able to do this is what the game likes to call stance changes. Stance changes the property of a character depending on the character itself. Mitsurugi and Ivy are prime examples of this. For example, Mitsurugi has 2, although you could say technically 3, stance changes that he can go into, and we're going to be using him mostly for our example. When you're in the stance change, you both gain and lose different attacks, as well as some different properties to your character. Now, as far as losing some things to your character, it's mainly to balance out the fact that a lot of stance moves are sometimes more faster and higher priority than most of the moves in the entire game. For example, as you can probably see that in Mitsurugi's stances, you lose the traditional basic horizontal and vertical attacks, but in return, you get moves that are great for pressure and keeping your opponent on their toes. It even gives you special parry tag. But like stated before, stances do have a weakness, like Mitsurugi's movement, which can be crucial in this game. So your best option might be to use that to your advantage of if like your character has a range attack like Helic, maybe you can poke him out of his stances. Or if your character is very fast, like say Itaki, maybe you can outmaneuver their stance attacks so that they all have to use their stances a lot less. For Ivy, her normals get slightly slower when her chain breaks for her sword, but they make her sword attacks have longer reach. Now you can use this to your advantage by getting up close and personal with Ivy so that you can bully her into going back into her regular normal stance. And I can go into more of these things as time goes on with more character specific episodes, which I am working on down the line, but hopefully this will help you get a better understanding of these specific attacks and stance changes that you will run into and maybe even use for your own benefit for your offense.
Damn, son, where'd you find this?
Now we're going to get into one of the staples and possibly one of the most well-known things about Soul Calibur series. Say you're on the defensive and you just can't crack the opening on your opponent's offense. There is one viable yet dangerous option you can use to your advantage to turn the tables on your opponent, and that is guard impacting. To perform a guard impact, press forward and guard at the same time for high attacks and back and guard for mid to low attacks. Guard impacting is practically the definition of a double-edged sword. You have to time the impact or else you are going to see, like on the screen, you will get hit every time. However, by doing a well-timed guard impact, you can throw your opponent off balance and get a quick strike in if you want, but the main thing about this is that you now have the momentum in your favor, which is the way you want it. However, This is not a 100% guaranteed jail-free card. While your opponent may be off balance, they can still counter you with their own guard impact. And this is what I like to call bursting. Bursting is basically when two players are in a guard impacting battle to determine who gets the edge. No need to panic in this situation. There are a couple ways you can actually get out of this if you think about it. You can let it play out to see who comes out on top, but I mean, you're going to be more of a 50-50 situation where you're most likely not going to win a lot of the time if you're the one that was in the defensive in the first place. But if you are hitting the guard impact, another thing you can do is just back off. You might not have the momentum when you do this, but the game's back in neutral so that neither does your opponent have the momentum. So honestly, this might not be such a bad option if you really think about it, but it's probably not the exact option you want. Which leads me to one of the final things you can do, which is either trying to delay your attack or maybe throw in a guard every once in a while. By doing this, you're going to throw your opponent's timing off balance, basically making it so that the option will be 70-30 in your favor. Now, to sum this all up, once again, remember that guard impacting is a double-edged sword. This will take time to master with timing and everything else surrounding guard impacting. But if you master this technique, you will be having the difference between getting your butt kicked and kicking your opponent's butt. And remember, if you get into a burst situation, do not panic. Just think about what's happening in the situation, take what you learn from your opponent, and use the 3 things that I've taught you before to the situation so that you can come out on top and be able to defeat your opponent.
Damn, son, where'd you find this?
Next, we're going to talk about sidestep attacks and throws. I wanted to put these two together because while they have different properties, they do something in common in the long run. To perform a sidestep attack, simply sidestep to the left or to the right and press the horizontal or vertical attack button. This will vary between all the characters on what they actually do, but it's pretty general on the consensus of how they work. To perform a grab, press horizontal attack and guard or vertical attack and guard. These cannot be guard and can be used to put pressure on your opponent. If you're on the receiving end of a throw, before the animation fully takes effect, press the button combination your opponent is using to break the throw. So if they're using the horizontal and guard, you do that. If they're doing the vertical and guard, you also press that combination. You can also duck throws, so you can avoid that completely. Now, the reason I put them together is that they both tend to work differently when you hit them from a certain side of the opponent. For example, when you use a throw on the back of your opponent, it does a special throw that is way more damaging than a normal throw. And a sidestep attack from the back can also be different depending on if it's a launcher or not, because it will make it harder for you to combo off of that opponent for most of the time. Now, I will go more into that in the next video I do, but for now you should get a general idea of what I mean by that. Now, how do you guard against these options? A good idea is to possibly duck and guard at the same time, because with this, you stop most of the attacks that are going to be hitting you at that time, and you also completely stop the grab option as well. Another thing you can do is to keep your distance. Back away and let your opponent come to you, because there's only a straight line they can really go to in that instant. Lastly, you can throw some horizontal attacks their way to tell your opponent, hey, stop that. Now, you definitely want to master these techniques if you really want to go far in this game, because if you don't, you're going to limit yourself to a point where you're going to be super predictable. So, as always, learn them, adapt, take care of it.
Damn, son, where'd you find this?
Next up, we have Unblockable Attacks. and as the name implies, they are attacks that can't be blocked. Now, why am I going over these? Well, thing is, certain things change with the games and this technique. For example, in some games, this attack can be guard impacted, but in others, like Soul Calibur 5, they can't be guard impacted. Now, a basic rule of thumb for these attacks, they tend to have a very long wind up, so they can be pretty easily avoidable. So if you want to use them in your overall combat style, your best chance is probably to get a little pressure on your opponent. Like for example, like mentioned earlier, Mitsurugi's stance attacks do a lot of pressure and attack. You can possibly use those, and then in the middle of using that pressure, go in for his unblockable attack. Now, as far as dodging goes, they still follow the same rules of dodging horizontal and vertical attacks like I mentioned in my basics tutorial. And if you're feeling confident, you can actually use quick basic attacks to knock your opponent off balance, and then it's all on you for your momentum to be pushed onto them. And honestly, that's all you really need to know about unblockable attacks for the most part. Everyone has them, and they're all pretty easily avoidable if you don't know what you're doing. But like I said before, they're not as clear-cut in every single game. Now when I find out how they work in Soul Calibur 6, I will revisit it in another video, I promise. And with that, we can call an end to this advanced guide to the Soul Calibur series. Thank you very much for watching, and if you liked it, slash that like button and subscribe. I promise after the next video coming, daily content will be on this channel. More on that in a later video. As for the basics video I made a while back, I do want to send a huge shout out to those who sent me much feedback in the comments, as well as subscribing to the channel. You guys rock, and your support keeps me going on my road to 100 subscribers. Till then, make sure you ask yourself one simple question. Does your soul still burn? Bye guys.